Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel Book Talks with Yo. My name is Yoanna and today I'm sharing with you some tips for finding the perfect ending of your book. You know what people say, what makes a book good is its ending. Of course, everything in your plot and else that is happening in your story matters for the quality of your book, but what will make your readers think and talk about your book long after they've read the last sentence is your ending. And I know this can be tricky to craft, so today I decided to share with you some of my tips for creating a good ending for your book and talk about the different endings you can have. So, without further ado, let's get into the video and craft something good. Okay, first let's briefly talk about the different types of ending you can have. The first one is the resolved ending. This is pretty much when you tie all the loose ends, you resolve every single conflict that has happened in your book, and you just wrap things up. And this is most commonly for standalone books because you pretty much tell your readers what happens with every plot and every subplot, like the main plot and the subplots that you have in your story. You tell them what happens with each characters, and there is pretty much nothing that is unresolved. And this usually is a very satisfying end for readers, but as I said, it's perfect for standalone books and not so much for books that would be part of a series, because if you are writing a series, you want your readers not knowing all the answers and wanting more. Which leads us to the second type of ending, which is the unresolved ending. And as I said, this one is more usual for when you know that this book will be part of some series or some longer series. And you need to leave an open and ambiguous ending so the readers will have more questions and will be eager to read the next book. But sometimes authors do this deliberately for standalone books because they want to make the readers ask themselves the questions and want to find answers on their own. They leave a particularly ambiguous and open end in order to make their readers reflect on the messages of their book and ask questions like what if, and just speculate about the ending instead of the author giving them the answers. But it should really be done very skillfully because otherwise it leaves the readers unsatisfied and it might even spoil the fun for them. And the third type of ending is the so-called tight ending. You know, when you tie everything up and you, in a way, close the circle, you end where you began. What this definitely does not mean is that your characters should be the same as they were at the beginning. No, this is poor character arc and we don't want this in our books. This actually means that at the end of the story, you return to the beginning by mentioning a particular place or a character, mentioning a character, or you can do something else. You can use something that you used at the beginning and invert it in a way in the end. What I'm doing with my book, for example, is I'm using this type of ending for my current project, the tight ending. And at the beginning, I'm using the weather to set up the scene and the mood and just the whole atmosphere that is present at the beginning of the novel. And then at the end of the novel, inverting this totally, and from a gloomy weather, it becomes a clearing sky, and to show that things are slowly becoming better and everything is, the things are clearing up, the things are becoming better. And the thing is that I'm using a few sentences at the beginning to describe the weather, and I'm using the same sentences at the end, just with from the ominous wind it becomes a breeze, from the gloomy sky it becomes a clearing sky with sun and everything like this. And for my previous book, I had a pretty simple resolved ending with an epilogue because it was a romantic book and it just fitted the expectations of this genre. But with this one, I'm using this tight ending because I feel like it works better for my purpose, and I'm honestly loving this. So if you haven't tried this type of ending, I highly recommend it because it's something very fun to experiment with. And a fourth very conventional way to end a novel is by using an epilogue. And this is a great way to have an extended ending of your book and show an insight of your world and your characters sometime after the main events of the plot that we've been reading about. And I feel like this is a very useful type of ending if you want to show us how things have changed, if you want to show us what is happening with your characters now after they've overcome a particular thing, for example, in your plot. And it is a common one, to be honest, and especially I feel like it's a common one in the romantic genre. As I said, my first book is a romantic book, and I use an epilogue because it really helped me show like this gap of the time that I'm not talking about. It's like a few years later. I don't think I'm mentioning how many years, but like you see how the characters have continued to grow as people after the main events, and this is, I feel like, as a reader, I feel like this is always very interesting because, as I said, it gives you an insight of the characters. You feel like it's still in the story, but as a reader, you feel like you're getting a snippet of the real life of your characters, of those characters. So yeah, it is a useful way, if it's a useful ending if you want to expand a little bit more of the story, but it shouldn't be like too much. A few pages is okay for an epilogue, especially if you are writing a standalone. Okay, now that we pretty much know what the most common types of endings are, let's talk about some tips that will help you craft this perfect, captivating ending for your book. One of the first things that you should really keep in mind when writing the ending of your book, and well, overall the whole book, is knowing your genre and subgenre and the expectations that come with this genre and subgenre and your target age group, because this will slightly alter how you want to end things up. I talked about this in my video about writing romantic books, but for them it's usually a happy ending, and your readers go into this book expecting this to happen. Well, this doesn't mean that you can't surprise your readers and you have to completely stick to those expectations. Of course, you can surprise them, and I'm actually encouraging you to do this because otherwise it becomes something that we've seen a million times. But keeping these expectations in mind, in the back of your mind when you're writing, can be a good starting point. One thing that I feel like many writers give as an advice and many people find really useful is to know your ending before you start writing the book. I know that it works for many people, but personally, I rarely know how I want to finish the book when I start writing. With my previous book, I had a vague idea about how I wanted to end things, but it's really changed during the process of writing, and I ended up having a better ending than the one I was planning to have. And with my current book, with my current project, I had no idea how I wanted to end the book. I had no idea about the ending until the very last moment. I feel like the very last moment the year just popped up and I wrote the ending. But I feel like with my current project, the format of the book is a little bit different, so that might be why. But yeah, if you're like me and you don't know your ending when you start writing, don't worry too much about this. You can always go back and edit it later. But a useful thing why you need to know your ending before you start writing is that in that way you can drop clues and do all the foreshadowing throughout the book, which will make the ending more satisfying. But as I said, if you're like me and have no idea about your ending from the beginning, don't worry, because you can always do this later when you're editing. Just remember that your ending should tie all the loose ends and should answer all the main questions and resolve the central conflict that's been driving your plot forward. Okay, my next tip is something that I think I mentioned in my video about writing romantic books, but I feel like it applies to pretty much all genres, not only the romance genre, and this is to add a few plot twists and some suspense and some anxiety right before your happy ending or your ending, whatever it is. I feel like adding this dose of suspense and this little plot twist right at the end just creates this anxious waiting from the side of your reader and makes them unable to put the book down. It makes them want to read more just to find the answers. It makes them anxious and apprehensive to find out what is happening. And this, of course, will make the ending a lot more sweeter and more memorable as long as it gives them relief. My next tip is kind of connected to the previous one, and this is to always make sure that your ending evokes a particular emotion in your readers. It doesn't matter whether you are going for a happy ending or a sad one or even an ambiguous one. The important thing is that you have to make your readers care for your story, and you have to make them feel for the characters, you have to make them feel for the story and care about it. Because this will, of course, make the book a lot more memorable. Like, think about it for a second. You're reading a lot of books during a year, and by the end of the year, you probably don't remember many of them. But there are still those few ones that you vividly remember and that just struck you and gave you a great impression. And of course, as a writer, you want your book to be one of those books. You want people to remember, well, not everything, but you want them to have an idea of what was happening in the book when they were reading it. And the ending is your perfect chance to do this. Think about this. This is the last impression your book is leaving in the reader. And if you want them to remember it, you have to make it a good ending. Just think about the way you want your readers to remember your book and the way you want them to think about it long after they've read it. And my last advice for crafting a good story ending is to keep it fresh. Just be original. Don't be predictable. Don't make your ending sound like 100 last pages that readers have read again and again. Keep it fresh. Even if your readers have certain expectations, as we talked about your ending, this doesn't mean you have to stick completely to those expectations. You can always surprise your readers and take your own take on this, have your own take on the ending that people are expecting. Just as long as you make sure that you're answering their questions, you're resolving the main conflict, and you're not leaving loose ends at the end if you don't want them to be. If this is a standalone, your readers will be happy. So just feel free to experiment and do whatever you want with the ending, as long as it's original, as long as it answers the questions, and as long as it leaves the readers satisfied. So that pretty much wraps up today's video. I really hope you enjoyed watching, and if you did, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on my new videos. Please let me know down in the comments what types of endings do you usually write. Thank you once more for watching, and I really hope to see you all next time. Until then, have a smiley week. Bye!